Welcome to the Get Well Now podcast series, COVID and Natural Medicine, sponsored by the Get Well Foundation. Today, I'd like to talk about self-healing. What is self-healing? And we'll explain it from a mind, body, and spirit perspective. Well, first, two stories. I was a colleague of Dr. Michael O. Smith of Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx, New York. And many of us probably don't know what South Bronx or Bronx, New York is about. It's one of the poorest communities in the United States. And during the 1970s, it was known for its arson. And people said that the devastation due to arson in the South Bronx in the 1970s was worse than the Allied bombing of Dresden during World War II. So we're talking about a landscape that's burnt out, collapsed, high crime, violence, guns, drugs, the whole thing. And in the middle of that was a vibrant community of people trying to get by the best they could. And the hospital, local hospital in the South Bronx, was Lincoln Hospital. Because it was a little bit off the grid, they had a lot more freedom to do what they wanted at Lincoln Hospital. So Dr. Smith started an acupuncture program. And it's a really fascinating story. You'd think that they'd learn about acupuncture from Chinese. No, at the time when they instituted acupuncture in the South Bronx, there's very little trade between the US and China. So as a result, the first acupuncturists or trainers in the South Bronx were actually from Quebec in Canada. They came from a French acupuncture perspective. Well, so anyway, they started doing detox acupuncture in the South Bronx. And what this entailed is acupuncture treatments done in a group. And they did specific acupuncture points for getting people off drugs, drugs like cocaine, heroin, prescription drugs, you name it. Drugs was really blighting the neighborhood ever since the 1970s. So the bottom line is that they found that this was a very effective technique to get people off of drugs, street drugs in particular. And it was not only the acupuncture, but it was also the groups. And so they did acupuncture in a circle, and then they also talked about their experience. And the people administering the acupuncture treatments were actually not trained acupuncturists. Many of them were addicts who basically found that acupuncture was the best way they knew of to stay off of hard drugs. And so I will leave you, I want to mention just a quote of Dr. Smith, which is all healing is self-healing. And so the point is that even in a devastated community with rampant with drugs and crime, people could find a way of healing themselves, even in a Western institution like the Lincoln Hospital. So they found a small corner, called it the acupuncture wing, and they helped countless people get off hard drugs and stay off hard drugs. Another healing story I'd like to share with you is one of my mentors. He was about 80 years old, and he still saw patients every day, well, almost every day. And you go, wow, that's deep. How does somebody, a doctor, for 60 years or something? Well, how Dr. Shen did it is how he's able to see patients most days. He typically worked 8 to 10 hours when he was treating patients. Well, first of all, when he started to be about 70, he started doing 1 hour a day of meditation and about an hour a day of self-massage every day. And then when he got a couple years older, he also only practiced two weeks on and 1 week off. So he practiced for 2 weeks, take a whole week off. Take 2 weeks on, practice, take a whole week off. So he did 2 hours, essentially 2 hours a day of meditation and self-massage. And he basically paced himself by working 2 weeks on and 1 week of rest. And so this is just fascinating how he was able to see that many patients. It involved taking herbs, and he was an herbalist and also an acupuncturist. He did his meditation and self-massage, as I mentioned. He actually took medication. He didn't want many people to know this, but he told me he took medication prescribed by his cardiologist, and he had a good life. So it really, I wanted to share one other thing is many people in our culture say, oh, well, when I get old, I just want to have time to travel. Well, despite being born in China and living all over Asia, Dr. Shen really did not like to travel, and he felt it exhausted his chi. So again, one of the ways he renewed himself was through meditation and self-massage. The other is by pacing himself and then also knowing his limits. So now I want to share with you some important self-healing techniques where you could do, as far as I know, just about anyone. So the first one I want to mention is chair and lying meditation. Now, when I first studied meditation, this was in the ancient days when the dinosaurs ruled the earth, and there was Andrew amongst the dinosaurs learning meditation. And I was told that you should only do it in the cross-legged position. Full lotus was much better, and you had to have your spine straight, and you had to be very, very serious about it. Well, 40, 50 years later, the dinosaurs are no longer ruling the earth, and I find it better to be easier about things. And there's really no reason why you can't meditate lying down, why you can't meditate in your bed, why you couldn't even meditate in a hospital bed. I do agree that it's important to try to keep your spine straight. So I do agree with that, along with the meditation teachers. But I don't agree that you need to be in full lotus or sitting position. So try to be easier on yourself in general. That in and of itself is self-healing. But number one tip that I'll share you with is, if you find that sitting meditation or chair meditation is too much, consider lying down or lying in a bed and doing meditation that way. Now, my second type self-healing technique is endorsed not only by the rapper Common, but also Sesame Street. And there's a great episode with Common, the rapper, on Sesame Street, talking about belly breathing. And belly breathing is known more scientifically as diaphragmatic breathing. Now, again, when I was first studying yoga in those early days, I didn't even know what they're talking about when they said diaphragmatic breathing. I had no idea. And then somebody simply said, well, what you want to do is put your hand on your abdomen, or better yet, maybe put a book on your abdomen, and notice that when you breathe in, your belly goes out. And then when you breathe out, your belly goes in. So breathe in, belly goes out. Breathe out, belly goes in. And that's what I call belly breathing, what other people call diaphragmatic breathing. Now, why is this important? We don't want to be looking like we have a pot belly or an extra pot belly, do we? Well, it might be okay from time to time, especially if it helps calm down our nervous system. So those of us who are dealing with COVID, whether it's long COVID, frequent infections with COVID, or just an ongoing case, we can do meditation, we can do belly breathing to help calm down our nervous system. So a lot of people with long COVID in particular are having headaches and anxiety, depression, and insomnia. And part of it's thought because the virus has wreaked havoc among the nervous system. Well, meditation and belly breathing are some of the best ways to re-engage your nervous system. So now, one of the people I taught, patients I taught belly breathing to, she said, yeah, breathing doesn't work. I tried it while I was pregnant and in the hospital, and it didn't have any effect. I had to get an epidural. And, that's very typical. That's the way it always is. We go, I don't need no belly breathing. And then we get into a situation where we need belly breathing and we go, yeah, it didn't work. Well, first of all, you're supposed to start, it's like an insurance policy. You start belly breathing when there's no stress. And then you start belly breathing when you're exposed to some minor stress, so that if you do have a major stress, the belly breathing will really calm you down. So I really endorse not only meditation, but specifically belly breathing. Another thing I like about the belly breathing is you can do it anywhere, in the car, in the supermarket checkout, at the health food checkout, at the pharmacy checkout, while you're waiting for your car to start, while you're waiting for your child or spouse. You can do belly breathing all those times, and it's very, very helpful. And in time, if you do this, say 100 times, you'll notice it does have, if you do it 100 consecutive days, you'll notice it has a powerful stress relieving effect, even symptomatically. Now, the next self-healing technique I want to talk about is walking in nature. So walking is great, and it's really great for everyone. And I'm sort of a fan of the boxer George Foreman. And why am I a fan of the boxer George Foreman? It's not for his boxing skills. It's because he was world champion, and then he kind of fell off the wagon and he became world champion again. And they asked him, well, how did you become world champion? And he had the typical kind of answer, well, he wanted to do it, he worked hard and all that. And then they said, well, what kind of advice do you have for regular people just thinking about exercising? And he said, the best form of exercise, this is a former heavyweight boxing champ of the world. He said, the best exercise is walking. So if George Foreman can walk, can't the rest of us at least try to walk? I mean, I was walking in the hospital. I mean, it was sad. I mean, me, a IV tube, holding on to a friend, holding on to a nurse, staggering to try to make it to the AIDS quilt in the hospital. Well, it took me 2 tries. I finally did make it to the AIDS quilt. And then a few days later, I could make laps around the hospital ward. But at any rate, walking in nature is very, very powerful. And the difference is when I'm walking in the hospital, there's bad air, there's bad light, there's bad vibes, there's a lot of fear, everybody's sick. That's not really a healing environment, unfortunately. But when you go outside, especially if you can find an area where there's some nature, there's all these things to see. There's all these things to hear. So a real quick meditation you can do in 1 minute after this podcast is just go outside and pay attention to all the sounds. You might hear a truck, you might hear a car starting up, you might hear a boat in the distance, you might hear somebody's lawnmower, God forbid, you might hear a leaf blower. So just becoming in touch with the sounds around us is healing in of itself. And then when you're on your nature walk, you want to also tune into your feelings. How are you feeling today? And, a lot of us go through life just upset. And on your nature walk, either you need to meditate, which involves clearing your mind, or using your nature walk to sort of brainstorm and sort of watch your mind going through its machinations. And maybe that'll give you some insight about what's going on in your body. And maybe that will give you an insight about healing. So the three things we've talked about right now is lying down meditation, walking in nature, and belly breathing. The next one I want to discuss is my view of music therapy. Now, I frankly don't know what music therapists do, but I'll tell you what this music therapist does. First of all, I saw a movie a few years back, and it was about seniors. And it was a great movie. These seniors were in a nursing home, and some of them were like catatonic. They couldn't speak. They looked down. They acted totally disconnected. And what they found is if they played music in the nursing home residents' past, that all of a sudden the light would go on in these people's eyes. And you could see that in the movie. So one way, if you have people that are hard to touch, hard to reach, if you find yourself is a little hard to reach, you just feel overwhelmed with sadness or despair, put on some music that you really love, or consider playing some music in your past that you really loved. And that can be a really powerful healing. Another aspect of my version of music healing is to write your own lyrics. So you might have a song, it could be a rock song or a pop song, whatever, and you can simply write your own lyrics. So, there's a song by the Allman Brothers called Rambling Man, and I'm working on my own version, which goes, Lord, I'm an herbal man doing the best I can. And I'll skip my imitation for the next time we meet. Okay, winding it down in terms of our lists of 5 or so self-healing techniques, I have prayer. Now, I'm a big fan of prayer, and before having a serious abdominal surgery, I was blessed by the fact that my aunt said a prayer for me. And she said, "Do you mind if I say a prayer for you?" And I said, "I love it." And so my aunt, my uncle, and myself were on the phone. And my aunt prayed not only for my healing, but also for the hospital, the nurses, and the doctors to do their job in the best way that they knew how. And that was just a real powerful healing. So let me dispel some of the thoughts that you might have about prayer. So first of all, if you are religious, you should by all means do a religious prayer. Some people don't believe in religion, but they believe in deities. So you could also pray to your deity. Many Chinese pray to the deity Guan Yin. And so that's the goddess of compassion. And so that would be something you could pray to. Other people pray to nature. I believe that there's a tribe out there somewhere, and their god is the sun. And so they're always worshiping the sun. So you could worship the sun as well. It's nature. So I want to give you the idea that if you believe in religion, you should definitely do a religious prayer. But if you don't want to believe in religion, you shouldn't get caught up by saying, "Oh, well, prayer is only for the religious folks." No, prayer can be used for anybody. And I've really followed prayer in healing for a pretty long time. And I'm a fan of a guy named John Marks Templeton, who sponsored a lot of research on prayer. And the research seems to indicate that the best type of prayer is the prayer for the best possible outcome. And I'll explain why this is. So some of us may know the Janis Joplin song. I think it goes something like, "Lord, please buy me a Mercedes Benz." Well, that's the wrong kind of prayer. The right kind of prayer is, let's pray for the best outcome for Andrew. Let's pray for the best outcome for Mandy. Let's pray for the best outcome for Samantha. Because if I would have prayed for my dad when he was on his hospital bed, to, oh, I pray that my dad, heals from cancer. Well, that was unlikely to happen. And furthermore, my dad didn't necessarily want to live much longer, right? But I could pray for my dad for the best outcome to come. So if the best outcome was my dad passing away, that was what he wanted. So that was his healing, really. So prayer is very important to healing. And please don't get hung up if you think it's only for the religious people. And now I want to give you a special bonus. The special bonus for today, self-healing technique, is have more fun. I remember when I was in the clinic and we had a guy and he's going, yeah, my life's terrible. I've got chronic fatigue syndrome. I've got cardiovascular disease. I have like headaches all the time. I just don't know, what I'm going to do. And I said, well, tell me a little bit about your day. And, maybe on your next appointment, bring in your journal of like what you do and what you eat in a typical day, right? Well, he brought it back and it was all work, family chores, work, sleep, end, right? And then I said, well, why don't you give me an idea? Just tell me what goes on in a typical week for you. And it's all work, drudgery, childcare, work, more work, helping out his boss, helping his wife, helping his relatives, helping this, helping that. And they said, what do you like to do for fun? I thought I'd, kind of stir his imagination. And he kind of looked at me like, fun? Isn't that for the little kids? And I don't have no fun. And I go, well, what do you like to do? He said, I love baseball. And I go, well, how about playing baseball? He goes, no, I can't play baseball. My wrists are shot, my knees shot. No, I can't play baseball. I go, would it be fun for you to watch a game? Yeah, it'd be fun to watch a game, but I'm at the house and everybody wants to watch something else. I can't. I go, well, maybe you could watch it on the internet, a baseball game, or maybe you could go to a baseball game yourself. He said, I hadn't thought of that. So, life is not supposed to be drudgery, and it is for many people. But, couldn't we have a little fun, sneak a little fun in there? And so it really got him thinking. And he came back the next week and he goes, yeah, I think you're right, Andrew. I'm just not having any fun. And then he said that he and his wife had some plans for the weekend. And I thought, well, that's really good. That's really healing for them to get away for the weekend. And even if it's just going away for a couple of hours, a little space and a little fun can go a long way to healing your heart. And so I think as we close today, I'd like you to remember the idea that self-healing really involves the body, the mind, and the spirit. And it is best if you could find a healer, even if that healer is you. And as my colleague, Dr. Smith said, all healing is self-healing.